Welcome to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. I am super excited to welcome Dr. Cynthia Libert to the show today. Welcome,
Thank
Cynthia.
you, Dr. Ruth. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm very
So,
grateful to be here.
I'm really, really excited to talk about this topic of brain health with you because I know, for those that don't know, Cindy is a functional medicine physician who helps people recover from complex chronic illnesses so that they can live their lives to the fullest. Her expertise is in brain health, specifically the mind-body connection and the prevention and reversal of cognitive decline. Her passion project is a ministry called the Joy Prescription, which I love that name, an online membership community that helps people build physical, mental and emotional resilience with lifestyle medicine and biblical wisdom. Wow, what a background. And I'm so excited that you bring that spiritual aspect to it as well, which I think is so important.
Thank you, Ruth. And thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm just really grateful for you. You're such an inspiration to me. I
Oh,
love the podcast, and I got a chance to delve into it a bit and watch several of the episodes, and you're doing really great work. So thank
oh,
you for what you're
oh,
doing.
oh, thank you. That's really kind. So I know that we're both kind of been drawn together by the amazing Fallon because we've both done some
That's right.
Fallon Jordan, who was previously on the show. And
Hmm.
we've both been through the Amen protocol and
That's right.
certified as brain health professionals. And I know you've gone a lot further by looking at the work that Dr. Dale Bredesen does with his protocol as well, which is, for those that don't know, is to help people who are struggling with cognitive decline. But before we start with all of that exciting stuff that we're going to talk about, I would love to know what you're really passionate about right now.
Goodness. Well, I am really passionate about creating my own joy prescription. Actually, there's a long story. I'm a conventionally trained family physician, and I've turned into a functional medicine brain health specialist. And there's a lot of backstory there. I suffered with pretty significant moral trauma and injury early on in my career, and we can delve
Wow.
into that later. And kind of teetered on the edge of burnout and
Wow.
suffered with just a really myriad of health issues myself, stress related, occupationally related,
Mhm.
due to the medical training and just working inside the dysfunctional healthcare system. And so thankfully, over the last 10, 15 years, I've had extraordinary growth and healing personally. And this is what's evolving into what I'm calling the joy prescription, which is
Yay.
sort of a framework for how I've healed and what I now get to share with the world. So that's what I'm passionate about.
Do you know, I think that's such an important message because we see so much news at the moment in burnout from a physician perspective, in the, medical practitioners who really are in the traditional system where it's kind of almost expected to a certain degree that you go beyond what you're really capable of in terms of the time that you work and the hours that you work, at a real detriment to your brain and whole body health. And I love it that you've been able to leverage your experience and turn it into something that you're truly passionate about in terms of creating the joy prescription to really help people
Thank you, Ruth.
take back that control. So I'd love to know from your perspective, what does optimal brain health mean for you personally, given the journey you've been on?
Yeah, well, wonderful question. I'm glad that you asked that. Certainly, I know we've have the connection with Dr. Daniel Amen, and he has that great quote that the brain is the software to our soul. And
Yeah.
wow, that is just so powerful to me. The brain is really everything. It's how we think and move and feel, and how we can just access all of those high level emotional states like contentment and
Yeah.
compassion and grace and kindness and love. And so all those experiences that make life worth living. And that's what it's all about. So certainly brain health is health because without a healthy brain, our body is not healthy. It controls all of our organs and all those little processes that keep our body alive, our cells running. And so for me personally, it really is just about caring for my body and
Uh-huh.
tending to it in a way, in kind of a self-love, self-care way. And so I really try to optimize sleep. That's number one. That's a big part of what I've been deprived of over my early adult life with medical training and
Uh-huh.
super long shifts, and then of course motherhood. I'm a mom of three daughters. They're
Oh.
10, 14, and 17. So
Wow, that's a handful for three girls over that period. That must be exciting, but
yeah,
challenging.
no shortage of interesting and fun things happening in the Libert household for sure. But thankfully, I'm now at a stage in my life and also kind of had the emotional, spiritual growth to allow me to actually carve out the everyday kind of structure of my life to be able to take care of myself better. And so I prioritize sleep. I wear my little device, my little Aura ring, just to
Yeah.
track that and find that very helpful, just that feedback of what helps sleep. And that's when we repair, is at night. And if we're not getting good quality sleep, we're not repairing our body and allowing those little microglia, the cells of our immune system, to clear out all the metabolic waste from the day. And so it's really critical. So sleep is a big piece of what brain health means to me. Physical movement and
Yeah.
exercise has really been extraordinarily important in my own repair and recovery from all the damage that I've done in life. I used to be an athlete growing up, and so that's always been a big part of my life. But then there was a large stretch there where I just focused on having babies, doing medical school, residency, doing all the things that needed to be done to take care of my patients in the office and the hospital and the nursing home. And it
Mm,
was just a very, very full, full kind of chaotic life. And I didn't prioritize my own self care, which is terribly ironic
mm,
when you consider what I was attempting to do as a doctor, helping people
mm,
to get better.
mm.
So I do high intensity interval training now. I lift weights, I jog, hike, walk, I move as much as I can. Of course, it's challenging when we have work that requires us to be
Mhm.
seated and in front of the computer, but I really try to incorporate a lot of physical exercise and movement, mindful movement throughout the day. So that's a piece. So sleep and movement. And then we can't forget food,
Yeah.
food as our medicine for sure. And as you probably know, that's not emphasized in medical school. We don't have very much training at all. In fact, I remember like learning about total parenteral nutrition when in hospitalized patients who are critically ill. That's pretty much about what I
Yeah.
learned. And I
It's shocking, isn't it? And I
it
don't
is
think it's really shifted that much, by all accounts from people I talk to. I don't think there's been a huge shift towards greater education in the medical profession of the vital importance of nutrition. And we often hear nutrition is medicine,
it is. Let your
and it needs
kitchen
to
be your
be.
pharmacy, as one of
Yeah.
my mentors used to say. So yes, so definitely the food aspect is so important. Trying to eat the colors of the rainbow with all
Yeah.
those little micronutrients and phytochemicals that stimulate our genes to create health in our body, and all the fiber from the plant compounds that nurture our microbiome and create health there. So in addition to food, and then another vital component to brain health to me is connection. It's
Oh,
so
yeah.
central. Just connection with my own self, with others, my loved ones, my patients, my community, and my faith in
Yeah.
God as well. That connection is really important as well. And so spending time and energy and attention nurturing those connections is really important to me for brain health. Learning about communication skills, now being
Mhm.
married 22 years and
Wow,
having, thank
congratulations.
you, having two teenagers and a preteen, learning about communication skills and practicing kindness and deep listening and grace. All of those things have been really important. Learning
Um,
about love languages for my kiddos and
oh,
husband and the
yeah.
people around me. So that's key. And I think we need more of that in today's world.
Yeah,
But
we definitely do. And I love that you drew across the five pillar, what I like to call the five pillars of brain health, as you talked about
okay.
our emotions, which is our feelings. So we remember it by saying, let's look at the facts. So first is feelings. The second, and I love that you really dive deep into this, was to look at our actions, which covers everything from what we do to our nutrition, to our sleep routines, to our exercise, and then the connections, see as connections to ourselves and to others and to a higher purpose, whether that's a spirituality or just a sense of connection to nature or something that's bigger than ourselves.
Sure.
And then you talked a little bit about our thoughts and how that can influence us. And then finally, we have our surroundings, which completely can affect us. And obviously, your
Absolutely.
surroundings during your medical years, and your surroundings with your family, the people that you surround yourself with as well can really influence how you show up. And it's important that as parents, we create the right surroundings for our kids to flourish as well. And what I think
Absolutely.
is really fascinating, which I loved how you introduced it initially, and because you mentioned that it's about making sure your body is working properly. And people often think that the brain is kind of disconnected from the body. It's this separate entity that we just look at from a structural perspective, but we don't look
Mhm.
at how it's so important. It's the organ that runs everything in our body, and how its function affects every other function, or nearly every other function in our body, depending on the communication channels that we have going on within our body.
Mhm.
I'd love to explore your story, that got you to where you are today. And particularly, you mentioned overwhelm and near burnout at the
Mhm.
beginning. Could you just take us back to this to tell us a
Sure.
little bit about your story?
Sure. And I love that we're so on the same wavelength, Ruth, about brain health. It's just fun to have that connection with you.
Thank you.
Well, I will tell you, first of all, that it is definitely very vulnerable and a little bit scary to be transparent about my own story
Uh-huh.
as as a physician, especially, and
Mhm.
society in general. It just kind of trains us or programs us to put on this mask of everything's perfect, I have it all together, no
Yeah.
troubles. And I've definitely learned on my journey that being vulnerable and sharing, where I struggle and the pain points that I have, that's the way to get genuine connection with
Mm.
others. And it's really been a beautiful thing. I've had a lot of physicians actually reach out to me, just little bits where I've shared my story here and there, and it's been really gratifying to do that. So I'm being courageous.
Yeah, and vulnerability is our
Take
greatest strength often, because, like you
Mhm.
say, we can have that connection. So
Yeah,
thank you for being willing to do that.
yeah. Well, I will give you my childhood in a nutshell. I grew up in Middle America in kind of the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri, and I had a kind of a golden childhood. I had loving parents, a wonderful sister. I did really well in school, was artistic and excelled in sports, and that's all wonderful. But it actually really started this pattern of perfectionism and people
Uh-huh.
pleasing. And I know that I've heard a little of your story, that we share that in common, that we're both
Yeah.
recovering perfectionists. And so I think that's, kind of some of the background that this all started, this just wanting to please everyone and have that mask on, like I have it all
Uh-huh.
together. And so there really is this thread of perfectionism throughout my life story. And it, and I excelled in undergraduate, got a BS in biology at St. Louis University. Then I went to Loyola University of Chicago
Hmm.
for medical school, and started to get some performance anxiety at that
Oh,
time,
okay.
and it's pretty common, and because you're put on the spot a lot in medical
Mm.
school, and maybe I deal with that a little bit today even, but
And I can share that when I was going through university as well,
yeah.
I went to Imperial College, and I ended up getting performance anxiety too,
Mhm.
because I came from being at the top of the class almost at
Yeah.
school to going to university and not being at the top of the class by any stretch of the imagination.
Mm.
And it was a real struggle. And I had that. I can really relate to that anxiety of
Mhm.
doing exams. Is really challenging, and I still find it the same today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're always growing and evolving and getting free of those things each day. So then we moved down to Asheville, North Carolina
Uh-huh.
for my family medicine residency training. I got married and I had my first baby during my third year of residency, which is
Wow.
truly just a very challenging thing because we were
Wow.
already dealing with major sleep deprivation from the training. And then you add
Yeah.
on top a breastfeeding baby. And of course, I wanted to do it just right. And
Wow.
I would, you know, pump my breast milk every few hours during my on calls at the hospital and just really wore my body out, but didn't fully recognize it until I started having some health issues
Yeah.
several years later. So I had my first job was in a community health center in Hendersonville, North Carolina, taking care of migrant farm workers, and it was beautiful work and I enjoyed it to some degree, but I didn't feel like I was able to connect with people or help
Uh-huh.
them at the level that I wanted to. And so I shifted into private practice in rural Georgia, had a primary care practice with a dear friend of mine from residency. And it was, birth to death. We rounded the hospital every morning. I rounded at the nursing home, took care of hospice patients, attended
Wow.
deliveries, had my office work, and I had three little kiddos. And
Wow.
being a business owner, there was just so many pressures. And I basically just was in survival mode for many years
Wow.
doing that. And ironically, it was my entry into lifestyle medicine for my patients and my practice that really caused the greatest burnout and difficulty for me because of the disconnect that there is with the third party payer system, with the insurance
Hmm.
companies and the government programs not rewarding doctors for taking that in depth time to do counseling, but rather you get rewarded for a quote, quick bedside manner, which,
Hmm.
typical doctor's office's visit is about 7 minutes long. And there's not
Yeah.
much you can do in that time frame besides, quickly put put someone in a box of a diagnosis and give them a prescription, maybe order some lab tests, and we'll see you in 3 months, how you're doing.
Mm.
And that's where the moral injury came in for me, is
Mhm.
'cause over and over again, I felt like I was not in a position to be able to freely give patients what they needed. And,
Mhm.
when they're coming to you with very serious problems, mental health issues, abuse, real pain and suffering, and that they either need your listening ear and or in-depth counseling, and you're not able
Mm.
to give that, it just was a great conflict for me. And so that's kind of what spurred me on to break away from my traditional private practice and go more into lifestyle, integrative, holistic medicine. And at
Mhm.
first, for several years, I tried to do that within the insurance system, and it just sucked the life out of me because
Mm.
I was working nonstop to try to be able to financially overcome that handicap, you know,
Yeah.
where you're spending longer with patients. And so that's a bit of my early journey. Thankfully, over the last several years, I've been able to kind of break those, we call them golden handcuffs, of being in a board certified doctor. So I've got regulatory boards and all sorts of
Mhm.
regulations over me, and multiple six figures of student loan debt. It's a common kind of underappreciated phenomenon in the medical profession. Is doctors often, they just pour their whole adolescence and young life into becoming a doctor. They get all this debt, and then you enter a broken system,
Mm.
and it really limits your options of freedom to be able to practice in accordance with your conscience. So it's been a great struggle,
Mm.
personally, health wise, financially, to come up against that system. But thankfully, I've found a way, an escape plan, just to have a really small, simple private practice where I work directly for my patients and kind of cut the third parties out of the exam room.
Mhm.
And so as I've been healing my occupation, I've also been doing my best to walk the walk.
Healing
And
yourself.
yes, exactly.
Wow. And thank you so much for sharing that story, because I think it's something that will really resonate with the listeners, that there's so many people out there who are in your position
Yeah.
as medical practitioners who really feel handcuffed to a system that is ultimately broken, and living with in their core values, which is helping others in the best, giving people the best care, and the system has become a system that serves itself rather than
Right.
serves the people it's there to serve. And it's the
Mhm.
same for me here in the UK, is that we the messaging that we have is protect the system,
Uh-huh.
and then save lives,
Yeah.
not protect the people and save
Right.
lives and make people better and help people be well. And I think it's really it, it's a really deep endemic issue,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure what the long-term fix is, where we've created this kind of whole system infrastructure has been created, to make money,
Yeah.
and to serve the systems that sit within that money infrastructure, and not necessarily to serve people in with the best care possible, to help them recover and ultimately get better and excel
Yeah.
in their whatever their brain type is and whatever their capability is, and not to bucket them into this space of, as you say, diagnostic treatment based on symptoms rather than understanding what the root cause is.
Mhm. Yes, I
Is
think the answer is we need to heal ourselves from within the system. The young people that go to become a doctor tend to be super bright and compassionate and have wonderful aspirations of
Mm,
helping people, but then you get this kind of compassion fatigue that sets in just because of the brutalness of the training and the culture within medicine just to suppress your own needs and
mm,
desires, and so it's really, we need to heal the healers and
yeah.
empower them to heal each other and the system. So
So I'd love to know, you diverged in or moved into brain health. What
mhm.
inspired you to get into brain health? What was the driver behind moving
Oh,
into
that's
that
a great
area of
question.
study?
So I think because I'm a woman and I am compassionate and I've always had this kind of deep listening skills that use in my patient interactions, I've drawn a lot of people with mental illness over the years, and so it started in that way that I just really um, looked to integrative and functional medicine to help people with mood disorders,
Uh-huh.
and but I never applied that to cognitive decline because I was stuck in this mindset of what I was taught in medical
Uh-huh.
school, that dementia is a progressive neurodegenerative disease that there's nothing you can do anything about once somebody has it, and so I just didn't really have any hope for that uh, condition for people until I got the opportunity to meet Dr. Dale Bredesen in
Oh, yeah.
2016. I got to travel to California to the Buck Institute for Research on Aging and meet his whole team and hear about all his cases. We watched patient videos and even had a patient come and share her story with us, and it was just incredible.
And
I,
his book, The End of Alzheimer's, and he's written many more, hasn't he?
Mhm,
It
yeah.
is really a great, almost a Bible for how to, the steps you need to take to help people um, win back their brain health again.
Yeah, it was just the fact that he took what I was already doing, integrative functional medicine, and applied it to something so severe as cognitive decline and dementia. It was just really validating of the work that I
Mhm.
was already doing, and I just kind of got pulled into it after that, and now I'd say probably my practice is 70-80% helping people prevent and work on reversing
And
cognitive
reverse.
decline now.
Yeah.
So it's just been a really neat path.
Do you know, I think I think it's fascinating that you've moved into that space. I'm really passionate about it because one of the reasons I first went to the Amen clinics myself personally and got really interested
Mhm,
in brain health was because I noticed I was struggling with recalling words,
mhm,
and I thought this isn't right. There's no history of Alzheimer's disease in my family, but I knew that something wasn't right, and I needed to find out why, and that led me into the brain health, becoming a brain health professional through the
mhm.
Amen University. But I'd love to know from your experience, from all the work that you're doing now with your clients, what would you say is the early warning signs for cognitive decline, or early warning signs that something is happening?
Yeah. Well, I would say that even before you get to early warning signs, there are key things about someone's
Mhm.
history that would make me just pay more attention. Any anxiety or depression especially in midlife, that can be a sign that there's something going on with the brain that eventually, decades later, may manifest as depression. And it can also be a cause of cognitive decline. So mental health concerns is a red flag. And also, of course, family history is important. It's not the end
Hmm.
all be all. But in terms of warning for raising red flags if there's something going on at present, it's typically more than just your um, misplacing your keys here and there. I mean, we all have
We'll do
brain uh,
that.
difficulties from time to time, but um, spatial issues, getting confused about directions, especially a route
Mm,
that you've taken a long time, that is definitely a warning sign. The hippocampal area in the center of the brain is the main area that's affected by Alzheimer's disease, and
mhm,
that helps us store a lot of spatial information. So challenges with navigating, losing your way, also facial recognition.
mhm,
That's a part of the hippocampal function. So, having difficulty recognizing people that should be familiar to you. Word finding difficulties, I think, are an important sign.
mm,
Sometimes they can be simply a sign that you're not getting enough sleep or that you're overly stressed. But I find that a lot of people tend to blame it on that for too long before they, look deeper. But anything in terms of your brain function, anxiety, attention issues, change in your sleep patterns, sleep deprivation, those sort of things. And personality changes can be an early sign that there's some
mm,
neurodegeneration going on. And that often comes to attention with interpersonal conflict, especially marriage relationships. So sometimes
mhm,
when spouses are just not seeming to communicate or something just seems off, sometimes it's because there's some cognitive decline going on in a partner.
mm. And do you know, I think it must be quite difficult in considering, where we're at from the environment we're in at the moment is because we're not connecting necessarily as
Mhm.
much as we would have done. We're not doing the driving to notice as much as we would have done to notice the shifts that are
Yeah,
happening cognitively. And so, where people have been really active and they're less active, that observational change could be slower because of
sure.
because of the change in circumstances. But I also note from people that I've connected with who have been in, for example, the sports world, where
Hmm.
they've had to take a pause, stop and reflect,
Yeah.
um, because of the current situation, is they've realized something is really wrong because they've been
Hmm.
able to take that time out and realize their brain is in trouble, um, and then seek out the support that they need. And one of the big issues here and I know it's the same over there in the States, is the complete lack of appreciation that head trauma can have, the
Oh,
impact that can have
absolutely.
on cognitive decline as well.
Absolutely. It is terribly under recognized. And Dr. Amen has really helped to open my eyes to that, even,
Mm.
even in kids with sports. I've got,
Yeah.
I said, three daughters and playing soccer and all sorts of contact sports, and it's a big, big deal
Hmm.
in terms of the impact it can have on cognitive decline. That's part of my intake questions for every patient that I see, regardless if they've had
Yeah.
any concerns about cognitive decline, is what kind of head trauma have you had? And
Yeah. And it can be the same for me when I talk to my clients, is it can be you have to ask the questions again, don't you?
Mhm.
Because people downplay it, because
Right, they do.
historically we've been told, by the traditional medicine, that if unless you crack your skull open,
That's right.
there's no trauma. But you don't have to crack your skull open to have
Right.
brain trauma and to bruise your brain and to damage it. And that can really impact, you 20, 30 years down the line. So kids that are getting impact, mental health issues, all of the things you've mentioned, stress, anxiety, head trauma, family history comes into play as well, can all, can have a knock-on impact further down the line, and potentially put them at risk of cognitive decline.
Absolutely. So key. Prevention
Yeah.
is the key.
Prevention is the key.
Wearing the
So
helmet.
I'd love to explore, because I know we talked about the mind-body connection, or the brain-body connection. What was it that you noticed yourself from an early warning sign that you were in trouble personally? What
Sure.
were the signs
Well,
for you
they
personally?
weren't subtle. I wish I would have listened
Yeah,
when
we
they were
forget.
more subtle. And that's a big part of this lesson,
Mm.
and the growth in my own health journey has been that symptoms are not something just to be band-aided and snuffed out. They're actually friendly. They're our body's signals and messages that, hey, pay attention. There's
Take
something going on
action.
here that we need to look at. And so the body will keep talking louder and louder until you pay attention and address whatever is going on. And so, oh my goodness, I had just everything under the sun. My blood pressure started spiking,
Wow.
dizzy episodes. I had panic attacks.
Yeah.
I was depressed. I had all sorts of digestive issues going on. So pretty much all of my systems
We're
were
starting to shut
were
down.
yes. And thankfully, I paid attention quick enough that I've been able to recover, and I'm so grateful for that.
Wow. And what was the first step that you took to really help you on that journey of recovery for
Yeah.
yourself personally, if you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I think it is just the courage to it actually I remember the moment that it happened. It was on my 40th birthday. I was driving home from the Grand Canyon. I took a trip with my mom, who was dying of
Wow.
cancer at the time. We went out to Sedona, Arizona, and we were driving back from the Grand Canyon, and I was gazing out the window, sort of pensive. And she asked me what I was thinking about. And I said, I need to make a change in my life. And I was thinking about, ways to kind of heal my practice, getting out of that dysfunctional system. And so I think it was just courage to take that next step, to extract myself from that system that I tried and tried to make work. And so courage was the first thing. And also just having a sense of care for my body, and
Mm,
making these decisions to continually allow myself to restructure everyday life so that I can actually, sleep and eat and spend time with my family, and to be able to have that creative expression that I can
mm.
have now within the context of being an independent private physician. That's huge toward nourishing my soul, and helping me to be flourishing and be authentic. So all of that, and I would say probably one of the most powerful things has been my physical fitness. Starting jogging again, and then working out with a personal trainer, and just really prioritizing that's my happy place where I can go
Yeah.
and just get stronger and more resilient there. So the physical fitness piece has been huge. And then number one, I would say, is my spiritual journey, just really diving deep with that, with my connection to God, and with community, my faith
Yeah.
community.
Do you know, thank you for sharing that, because I don't think many people think about the importance of the spiritual connection piece from a well-being perspective. And I like to look at those 4 quadrants: your emotional, your physical, your mental, and your spiritual. And they're all really important. Irrespective of whether you have a faith, is that spiritual connection to something that is meaningful for you, so that you can find meaning in your life, and also that you can feel that you're living purposefully and also passionately. So you're doing something that lights you up inside. It is so important. I'd love to dive into some fun facts.
Okay. Fun facts.
Before we go on to the gut-brain connection, which I'd love to talk about
Sure.
next, and that mind-body connection piece that's so important. The fun fact is looking at the 5 pillars of brain health, remembered by the
Okay.
mnemonic facts:
Yeah.
feelings, actions, connections, thoughts, and
Okay.
surroundings. So let's just dive into actions. What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
The craziest thing I've ever done. Well, I would have to say starting, taking that first leap from conventional medicine into a solo private practice owner when I had an infant, toddler, and a child at home, and totally on a shoestring budget. I do think I should probably have questioned my sanity, but I was just doing what I felt like I needed to survive, and it was a stepping stone. So I've not jumped out of any airplanes or anything
Oh
like
no, you
that.
don't have to do that. But I mean, that's a really big thing, is taking that first step, but living into your values
Mhm.
and knowing that you can be congruent with them, and
Yeah.
move forward. And our values guide us in life, and when we're off with our values, we get sick,
Oh,
because
I
we're
agree
not
with
we're
that.
not living our authentic self, are we? So I think that taking that courageous step and doing it on a shoestring budget, it just goes to show that you can do it when you put your mind to it, and you have that faith behind yourself that you're capable. Okay, connection to yourself. Talking about values, what's your most important value that guides you in life?
Value. Well, I have 3 core values: faith, family, and fitness, and then I
Oh
actually added
wow.
a 4th. I added fun because that doesn't come supernatural for me, and they're all F's and easy to remember. But I'd say probably my faith is the number one thing. That I
Wow.
have a really deep faith in God, and that drives all of my decisions and really my whole life. So I'm very
Wow.
grateful to that. I try to live my life by the golden rule, and that's what got me in such trouble, trying to survive in the conventional healthcare
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it's really, I love the fact that you've got 4 F's, because I think it's easy to remember, isn't it, as well? I love things that are easy to remember, because
yeah,
then it's easy to guide yourself. You can easily check in. So next one is connection to others. Who's been your real role model in life?
that's an easy one. That is definitely my mom.
Oh,
Just a incredible human being. She actually died 5 years ago,
oh, so sorry.
but she has left a phenomenal legacy, and she's goodness, she was a chemist before there were hardly any women in the field, so it's definitely inspired me in
Wow.
that way, but also just as a mom, just extremely loving and compassionate, and so selflessly devoted to her family. When she was in her mid 50s, my dad and my mom, they sold the family home, quit their jobs, and they walked the entire Appalachian Trail. They walked the Pacific. This
Wow,
was
that's a great
Georgia,
trail. That's
Georgia to
beautiful.
Maine, over 2,000 miles. And then they walked the Pacific Crest Trail, the Colorado Trail, the Florida Trail, and even before she died, they went out to Spain and did the El Camino there. So
Wow.
I feel like her life was art, and I'm
Wow.
still learning from her by contemplating. the way that she
Yeah.
lived her life. So really grateful for
Wow.
my mom.
And thank you so much for sharing that, because I can really relate. My dad is the role model for me, and I'm still learning
Mhm.
from the way he lived his life. And
Yeah,
I think for many people, it can be parents, obviously
yeah.
depending how great the parental relationship was. But a lot of people have said it's their parental member that's really been a role model. And she sounds such a phenomenal woman to do so much, and to still keep teaching you
Mhm.
is such a great legacy to lead. So I'd love to explore the next one, is thoughts. What is the most stupid or crazy thought you've told yourself
Oh,
in the past that isn't true? And this comes
it
back to
isn't
killing
true.
the ants, the automatic
The
negative
brain
thoughts.
ants, yes. Oh, goodness, I have plenty of those. I would say one of the most pervasive ones, and I think I'm finally free of it, is that I beat myself up for my sensitivity and for just being unable to fit in my round self in that square um, hole of being a conventional doctor, because my life could have been a lot easier if I would have just
Yeah,
followed that straight path, and it caused me a lot of suffering and financial strain. So it was true on some level, but now, the thought, i- I do recognize it as a gift now that
yeah,
I that was it was the truest expression of myself to stay true to that. And when I see what's happening in our healthcare system now with COVID, with the pandemic just
yeah.
crushing the medical system and my colleagues, I have such compassion for what they're dealing with, burnout and moral
Mm,
injury. And um, I'm just grateful that I figured out fairly early on in my career how to escape that. And my heart goes out to people in
mm,
healthcare now, and the challenges. So
absolutely.
many are looking for a way out, and they're just really
Mm.
struggling.
Yeah, it's really hard. And thank you for sharing that, because I'd love to go back to the round peg in a square hole. Is you obviously weren't supposed to be in that hole,
That's
and
right.
we could easily take the main road, like your mum's journey. She could have taken the car
Mhm.
to get to a destination, but there's no beauty or enjoyment in that. That the enjoyment, the joy comes from your four F's
That's
that you've
right.
mentioned, and going the journey yourself,
That's right.
and having seeing things that you wouldn't otherwise see, by taking it slower and uncovering.
Yeah.
If you think about your mum's path, it's much slower journey, but
Mhm.
actually you discover things in much greater detail, and you see much more beauty. And if you reflect the beauty within the patient, and the beauty within the opportunities that are presented to the patient by doing the walking and
Yeah.
going on that journey with them, rather than trying to race them from A to B.
What a beautiful observation. Thank you for for
No, you're most
noticing that.
welcome. Yeah. And so tying in with that, with the beauty of the journey, is for surroundings, which is the fifth pillar. And you've talked about how your surroundings really, from a medical professional, the structure of the whole system really depleted you personally.
Mhm.
But what for you, from a surroundings, is the most beautiful place you've ever visited,
Hmm.
and what made it so special?
Goodness. Well, I have definitely been privileged to do a lot of travel. I've got to go to the Caribbean, to Mexico, to Canada, and to Europe.
Wow.
And I definitely Sedona, Arizona, that trip that I took with my mom. And then
Mhm.
later I met up with my girlfriends from medical school there. Again, that is a very special place in Sedona. But if I had to pick one, I would pick the mountains of Western North Carolina, where I
Wow.
live. We have just gorgeous green mountains and hiking, waterfalls. I love spending time in nature, out
Oh, me
hiking and
too.
being active with my family and friends. So Asheville, North Carolina area, where I call home,
Wow.
is the most
Wow, that's
beautiful.
amazing that you found that beautiful place and it's actually your front doorstep. So,
That's right.
wow, wonderful. So I'd love to dive into the brain body connection piece that we
Mhm.
often overlook from a diagnostic perspective. It's often the last thing that people talk about. Everybody gets told to, take the medication, and medication actually of not necessarily the first thing that we should be doing. It's the last thing that we should be looking at. What for you is often the missing piece when we come to the brain body connection? What's often overlooked, would you say, that by taking that slow walk, it's much easier to uncover?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say mindset, the
Hmm.
what's in between our ears, and just the way that we're framing our experiences, and our idea of if we can get better, if it's even possible. So mindset is a biggie that I work with my patients on.
Mm,
Environmental medicine is also huge. So, from the mercury amalgams in our teeth to mold, and either in the workplace or at home, that can have a
mm,
big impact on brain health. Hidden infections, so
yeah.
tick bites, Lyme disease, and the co-infections, those are often overlooked.
And they can present as depression as well, can't they? So having
Yeah,
Lyme's disease is one of the root causes of depression. So you could
absolutely.
treat somebody with antidepressants, but it won't actually remove it because you have to treat them with antibiotics.
Uh, Sometimes antibiotics, but also just supporting the whole system,
Whole
from
immune
hormonal
system.
balance to gut microbiome to
Mm,
mitochondrial health to detoxification systems. So there's a lot of layers to that.
mm, mm. And I find this whole gut microbiome piece, or microbiota, depending on how you want to call it, really fascinating because it's rarely talked about. My daughter was born by C-section, and
Uh-huh.
so she didn't get the microbiome bathing in bugs from me that she would have done if I'd given birth naturally. And she struggled with her a lot of coughs and
Mhm.
infections as an early baby, and the default was to from visiting the doctor, was to treat her with antibiotics,
Uh-huh.
which
Yes.
actually kills her any gut
Sure.
bacteria that
That's
are healthy in her in the first place. And it hasn't been until we've put her on a probiotic
probiotics. Mhm.
that she's actually reduced her infection and how bad her coughs and colds have been, and she's been able to kind of rebuild her system. But it's
Great.
very difficult, isn't it, for people to know what to do unless they get the right advice, and they get almost brainwashed, as it
Mhm.
were, into this traditional approach um, that doesn't take this integrated view.
Yeah, I'm hopeful though that this information about the microbiome is going to make its way into conventional medical training at some
Yeah,
point. It's there, we're at the beginnings of that, but you're
yeah,
right. And cesarean section, she did actually get bathed in a microbiome. It just happens to be your skin microbiome.
yeah,
I learned that we can take a 50-year-old person, and scientists can tell whether they were born via cesarean section or vaginal birth just by sequencing their microbiome and seeing if
wow,
there's skin flora versus the typical
wow,
vaginal flora. And that does indeed have long lasting impact
yeah,
on the health of the child and even as an adult. But
yeah.
there is a lot we can do. to nurture our microbiome and cultivate more diversity. Definitely, number one thing that we have control over is what we put in our mouth in terms of food. The plant material, like I said, the rainbow of colors of food and the fiber are what's really key with plants to help
Mm.
nurture the microbiome. When we eat fiber, the bacteria in the gut feed on that, and then they create butyrate and other helpful compounds that actually feed the lining of our intestines and keep
Make it
the
strong.
intestinal, yes, integrity there, and kind of breed diversity within the microbiome so you can ward off pathogenic bacteria.
Mm.
There's just so much to be said on this topic. I'm very passionate about
Mm.
protecting the microbiome. That's one thing I feel like as a mom, I'm the protector of their microbiome the best I can while they're in my care, and that's a big job. There's a
It's
lot
quite
of
difficult as
threats
well, you
to
know,
it.
with the food industry, as there's
Yeah.
put so much junk in food. It's very difficult unless you go completely clean whole
Mhm.
foods. It's
Mhm.
very difficult to keep your children away from foods that actually don't serve their microbiome and actually can really disrupt it.
Yeah.
And especially with, you know, the way they farm foods now as well.
Mhm.
Even if you
Mhm.
think you are helping them, often it's not as much help as they need.
Yeah.
Because of the genetic changes to the food, the pesticides that are introduced
Mhm.
into the foods can really be problematic for some children and
Yeah.
adults as well, which leads to allergies, isn't it? So I think I agree with you. It's such a enormous topic, which I don't think gets enough airtime
Yeah.
for people to really better understand the key things, the key steps that they could take. What do you often find is a common issue that relates to your patient's gut microbiome that can be fixed through appropriate nutritional support?
Sure. Okay. Well, goodness, you could list hundreds, if not thousands, of disease processes that are related to microbiome disruption, everything from autism, to breast cancer, PCOS, neurodegenerative changes, Parkinson's, even Alzheimer's disease can be
Yeah,
related to a disrupted microbiome. It could be one of the factors.
yeah.
Some of the more um, direct, easier things to address are just when the intestinal system is giving you clues that the microbiome is off. So, bloating, belching, indigestion,
Yeah.
diarrhea, constipation, those sort of things are clues that there's probably something going on with the microbiome. And we take a very comprehensive approach to it. At some point or another, most of my patients go through either an allergen elimination
Hmm.
type diet, advanced stool testing to look
Hmm.
at the microbiome, look at functional markers, and then we try to get back to basics with the diet, get rid of processed foods, and just really try to get a lot of plant material and fiber into their system, and address anything in terms of deficiencies, whether they might not have enough hydrochloric acid
Hmm.
or bile salts or
Hmm.
pancreatic enzymes, or there might be difficulty with the migrating motor complex in the gut with the motility. So there's actually the 5R functional medicine approach. Are you familiar with
No, I'm not
it?
that
Yeah,
familiar with it, but I'd love to
it's
hear it.
yeah, it's a framework for dealing with gastrointestinal dysfunction. So
Uh-huh.
just 5 R's: remove, replace, reinoculate, repair, and rebalance. So
Wow.
the remove is simply taking things out of our system that don't belong
That are
there, are
hurting
not
it.
serving us. So everything from food allergies to
Yeah.
pesticides, toxins, parasites,
Yeah.
overgrowth of bacteria, and I also take it into the psychosocial spiritual realm of,
Yeah.
any behaviors or thoughts or mindsets that are
Stresses.
not serving us. So that's the
Yeah.
first R. Obviously, many layers to that, to addressing it's a multiple
Yeah.
step process. And then replacing is giving your body what it needs, that it's missing. So as I mentioned, the bile salts, hydrochloric acid, pancreatic enzymes,
Yeah.
or sunshine, movement,
Yeah.
nurturing
So many things we
relationships,
can do.
connection, that sort of thing. So it's remove, replace, reinoculate, which probiotics are great kind of initial steps to helping
Yeah.
replace. But to truly shift the microbiome and to have lasting changes, it has to be through diet and lifestyle, because
Yeah.
once you stop a probiotic, you lose the
You
effect.
lose it. Hmm.
So there's remove, replace, reinoculate, and then repair.
Hmm.
I hinted about the intestinal integrity, the lining being very important. We have this term leaky gut,
Leaky gut.
or intestinal permeability that can happen for a multitude of reasons, from antibiotics to steroids, anti-inflammatories,
Alcohol.
stress, sugar, alcohol. The list is long, but we can repair the lining through gentle nutraceuticals, botanicals, slippery elm bark, marshmallow root, aloe vera, um, turmeric, vitamin D, and
Mm.
even probiotics can be helpful in that, as well as all the other steps, the remove
Hmm.
and the replace, the
Hmm.
inoculate can help with the lining. And then rebalance is just simply recognizing that it's not just a one and done thing. You've got to rebalance your lifestyle to be able to keep these changes going longer term.
Yeah. Do you know, I love that. I always love,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that really important piece of wisdom, because I think it's so important to make sure that we rebalance and look after ourselves, because like you say, it's
Mhm.
not a one and done thing. And
Yeah,
we need to be constantly working, whether it's our gut health or our brain health or our whole body health, whatever way you look at it, it's not, we don't just do a fix and then it's finished.
yeah.
We have to maintain it over the long term. In the same way, we have
Mhm.
to maintain, the right eating habits. Everything needs to be maintained.
That's right.
Like we look after our car engine, we have to maintain it, and it's so important that we do from our engine of life, which is our brain, and our gut is
Mm.
absolutely so important and vital to feeding our brain the right chemicals for our brain to function if effectively. What one piece of advice, given this show is all about brain health and unchaining your pain, what one piece of advice would you give anybody who is, and I'd love to go back to your core story, which is anybody in the medical profession who's really struggling
Yeah.
with burnout or overwhelm, and they don't feel like they're living into their true purpose, their core values. What one piece of advice would you give anyone that if, is feeling their systems are starting to shut down and the body's saying no?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking me. And part of my joy prescription is, God gave me an acrostic for it, and the JOY is a process that I use to this day to drop in when I'm in a dark place, or having negative thoughts or feeling trapped. I the J stands for just be still, breathe, and surrender. So that I had to learn. That was a challenge for me to learn because I'm a doer, I'm a fixer, and that J is so critical because it can bring you into peace just in the moment, even when you're, in the midst of a great storm or trial that you're dealing
Yeah.
with. So that J, and then O is this open your heart kind of posture of, okay, I'm ready to receive. I'm ready to be open to the good that life has for
Yeah.
me, whatever there is to learn in this opportunity slash challenge that I'm going through. So the O is to open your heart to the good and the potential, and the Y is the yes, the yes piece, just knowing that we have a choice in this process of change, and just kind of being in alignment with it and moving forward. So, and my main advice is just to never give up and
Yeah.
take that next step forward. That, it's definitely a marathon,
Yeah.
being in healthcare and just life in general,
Yeah.
and that there's help. So definitely reach out
Yeah.
to Dr. Ruth, the work that you're doing, or your doctor, or counselor, or pastor, or a trusted
Yeah.
friend. They're just reach out and ask for help. And now
Yeah.
there's so many groups online. I'm part of a lot of doctor forums on Facebook and different places, and it's really neat to see the connection that's happening and people reaching out
Yeah.
and comforting each other and learning from each other.
Yeah.
There,
And
there's
I love your joy prescription, because just be still
Mhm.
is a really important first step.
It
And
is.
action doesn't mean moving forward. Sometimes action is pausing, is
Mhm.
an action. And sometimes we have to take that pause in life to
That's right.
really have the opportunity to, like you say, the second step is to open your heart.
Mhm.
And if we don't pause, our heart doesn't have that time to rest
That's
and
right.
think about what do I need to open myself, what possibilities can I open myself to, what is it that I need to surrender
Mhm.
to allow myself permission to feel, and permission to just be who I want to be, which you mentioned, that importance of living into who you authentically were,
Mhm.
and being that person, allowing yourself that permission to be a circle, not a square. And that journey that you went with your mum is
Mm.
just be still and open your
Mhm.
heart, which is exactly what you did. And yes, that I love that last step is that kind of finding the answer
Mhm.
that is right for you.
Mhm.
Wow, Cindy, thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for
Thank you so
sharing your
much.
story and giving people in your profession that hope that there is a life out there that they can lead, that's on their terms,
Mm.
that they can still have that passion and that purpose about, to fulfill their, what they feel is their core mission, without the, without burnout, and without feeling that they are off purpose or moving away from their core values. How can people connect with you and find out more about what you do?
Sure. Well, I have two websites. Caringforthebody.org is my clinical practice. So you can find out about the work that I do working one-on-one with patients in a medical setting. I actually have a free 10-part mini course for people there. They can sign up for that. And then I also have thejoyprescription.com, which is my ministry outreach where I share my faith and this joy prescription that I've been alluding to
Mm-hmm.
with people. So I have a membership site there that they can access.
Yeah, so do make sure you connect with Cindy. She's got a great breadth of experience in helping you unchaining your pain, and also, bringing her personal experience to her practice, and all of her expertise as well, in terms of helping people with cognitive decline and gut health. And wow, what a breadth of knowledge that you have. Cindy, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been a real pleasure. And if there's anything I can do to help you or your community or your practice, and through the work that I do with Havening, then obviously
Thank
I'm
you.
obviously here to help you on any group coaching that you feel could be helpful and serve your wider community and your colleagues as well.
Well, thank you
So,
so much.
oh no, you're
Dr.
most
Ruth.
welcome, and I wish you every success in
Ditto.
your practice and fulfilling your beautiful mission and that joy prescription that you are able to give to your patients and to your wider network and ministry. So, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, I'm super grateful to you, Dr. Ruth. Thank you for allowing me to share my story and for being who you are. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like and share this episode and leave a review on my website or on Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for opportunities to optimize your brain health or unchain your pain from a past trauma, make sure you visit my website www.ruthmaryallen.com and use the code podcast10 at checkout to get 10% off all programs. And always remember, you are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better. You have the power to unchain your pain and optimize your brain power and performance so that you can win back energy and time doing what you love.
Each episode of Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain with Dr. Ruth Allan is for educational and demonstration purposes only. The information shared in each episode should not be interpreted as medical advice. This episode should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical or physical condition. Do not use this episode to avoid going to your healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with a trusted healthcare professional before doing anything contained in this episode. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact www.ruthmaryallen.com/connect.